Hi, it's Grim with Luxury Gaming, and we're here with team Giorda to Chiuso. They played in the LCS 3v3. It was 129 teams. They made top 16. BladeYGO piloted Shadal, Beryl piloted Dragon Link, and Matt piloted Virtual World. Go ahead and introduce yourself, guys.
Hey everyone, if you guys didn't know who I am, my name is BladeYGO. I run a YouTube channel that currently has around 23,000 subscribers. If you want to come over, stop by, feel free to do so. I piloted Trap Shit all this weekend. I thought, based on the current metagame when it comes to control decks, right now control decks are pretty meh. Like realistically, Eldritch just doesn't have a good combo matchup because its engine is very weak comparatively to its recursiveness. So I just felt like I wanted to play Shadal because I didn't want to play a ton of combo mirrors. Like, for example, I think the Drytron mirror is horrible. However, I didn't want to play a control deck that had a very weak engine inherently. So because of that, that's where I came to the conclusion that Shadal may have been a good pick for this event, just because it has a really strong matchup against the entire board over the course of the weekend. I mean, I can go over my matchups later, but I just thought it had good matchups all around, and it performed pretty well, I'm not going to lie. So, yeah.
That's awesome. And Borealis, would you like to give your shoutouts and introduction?
Hello, everybody. My name is Ryan Ortiz. You may know me from Mech Knight Invoked fame from like 5 LCSs ago. Yeah, it's been a while. I run a team called the Akatsuki on Discord. We don't do much, but hey, we coming back up there. And I'm affiliated with Phoenix Gaming and Phoenix Gaming YGO, twitch.tv/Phoenix Gaming YGO. We're going to try to hit affiliate next month by keeping everything together. So I'm happy to say that we're doing well on that platform. I played Dragon Link, probably a fallen soldier of last format. Losing Link Cross really hurt, and especially the Buster Lock too. But we're still able to make a consistent great board. And I played this because the night before, we had a long talk about what I should play for the event. I was thinking about playing Trap Shit All, but someone here didn't think I was ready, even though I thought I was. So we needed a combo deck that wasn't Drytron or Virtual World, because I haven't spent a lot of time with those. So I went back to Dragons because I know it. I wanted to play Rock, but personally, I don't think that deck's great. I just couldn't solve it in time. So we ended up just playing Dragons. I think it's great. I think the board that it makes is very resilient. You can end on Spheres plus hand traps, which is low-key kind of enough in some matchups. Like, Spheres, Nib, Ash will win you the game, especially if you have Tidying too, because the amount of advantage you get's fine. And then next turn you set up for a Boreal sort of decay. And I think it has good matchups all around against everything. Shout out to Ricardo Fort and Miami! And, yeah, that's all I gotta say.
Got you. And Matt, would you like to give your introduction?
Sure. Hey there, guys. I'm Matthew Jr. Right. I'm from California. Good for here with Ryan. This is my first LCS top. For this LCS, I decided to play Datascape. So, when we were looking through the options in terms of decks, whether it be VW, Drytron, and Eldritch variant, or any of like the rogue combo decks, being like Adams, Dragon, or Infernoble, I ended up ultimately setting on VW because after the last LCS where Coogan won, I started heavily focusing into Datascape. Even though I've been playing, my main deck was basically card for card the same list that I've had for about a month already. This would go towards like shoutouts, but I would have to say largest shout out being to Antonio Papa Nesh.
Yeah.
He was the best coach and or helper in terms of me learning VW that I could ever have. It was because of Nesh and because of taking so much time trying to hone the deck. I feel that I was able to perform as well as I did with the deck. I'd say any other shout-outs, shout out Red Lotus Gaming, Guts, shout-outs to True Man's World, TMW, that I do most. Whenever I play test, I end up playing in there most of the time.
And Buster.
Also shout-outs to Lungerty Velen and his server, The Vault. And of course, shout outs to my awesome teammates Ryan and Jacob.
Aww.
Whoa. Yeah, I forgot to do shout outs, but I wanted to say shout outs to the gang. Let's get it.
Yeah,
We're gonna be
good job,
Team
guys.
YouTube ad revenue, but Blade didn't want to do that.
Whoa, I never said I didn't want to do that. I just didn't realize.
Oh, it's bad for the algorithm, yeah.
It might be, dude. Yeah, so we are going to start off with Blade's deck. So I've seen people innovate this deck a little bit, but on the extent that Shadal is playing no Shadal fusions and stuff, but this deck seems pretty wild.
Yeah.
For tech choices, on top of, like, it's literally just Shadals with Dogmatica and Trap cards, which is still pretty insane with some utility behind it. But yeah, go ahead and jump into the deck if you'd like.
Awesome. So yeah, I played Shadal this weekend. I gave a little theory earlier about why I feel like right now, like, again, I gotta, like, make this bold, I guess. I don't think Elich is that good right now. I think VW, like, it has an okay VW matchup. Its Drytron matchup is just terrible. And then all around, it's just, like, it's not high impact enough, I guess. Whereas, like, other control decks, like, even like Prank Kids, if they resolve their combo, they have a very, like, while I don't think that deck is good for other reasons, Prank Kids at least makes like a Battle Butler, which is just a double Raigeki with Meow Meow, and that's still very high impact. So I felt like Ellis just lacked that capability, especially without cards like Jet Synchron from the past. So because of all of that, I felt like the best choice for this event would be a better control deck over something like Eldritch. And that's why I went with Yugioh. I think right now, given the format, Winda obviously can be a win condition in of itself. In the control matchups, you have cards like Dragon and Ariel, which you just keep looping with cards like Punishment into App Cologne, and whatever the case may be. And just bear in mind that if you banish 2 to 3 Golden Lords in an Eldritch matchup, all of the Eldritch cards become fake cards because they don't do anything. So because of that, I felt I wasn't afraid of Eldritch at all. I felt I had a decent Eldritch matchup. And the only Eldritch matchup I think I lost all tournament was top 16. But that was a great match, so I'm not too sweating about that. But yeah, I thought Shadal was a good pick. I do think, however, the traditional builds of Shadals have their own problems. I've talked about this in a video on my channel, but I think the regular builds of Shadals all focus too heavily on using the Shadal fusions because inherently when you're deck building and just playing a deck in general, you want to choose a deck that, generally speaking, requires less cards to play the game. So, for example, a deck like Virtual World requires 2 cards to play the game, whereas a deck like Eldritch or Zodiac only realistically require 1 card to play the game. And because of that disparity, granted, there are scenarios where the disparity is irrelevant due to the amount of power you gain from that trade. At the same time, when it comes to a deck like regular Trap Shadal or just Shadal in general, if you're using like 3 cards to activate a Shadal fusion and get access to Construct, even though you're gaining value, you're going to have a ton of bricky hands. I just didn't feel like the power that you get out of activating Shadal fusion was worth it comparatively to the resource investment and the consistency issues that that combo brings. So that's why I felt like you needed to approach Shadal in a different manner. And that's where Schism comes in. Schism kind of solves this problem altogether because all you need to do is load your grave with a Shadal and any attribute, and then you're just able to snowball out of control from there. For example, one Schism gets you access to either Alcalon or Construct, and that gets you more value from there, and then you then snowball out of control on the next turn, and eventually you can just OTK. So I think the pieces that Shadal have are just some of the best pieces in the game, but I felt like you needed something to tie the entire deck together, and that's what Schism inherently does. So I definitely think Schism is like the reason Shadal is viable in any capacity right now. So I guess, yeah, no, and obviously I don't play any Shadal fusion cards. Because I'm relying specifically on Schism, I felt as though cards like Shadal Fusion and especially El Shadal Fusion become irrelevant. Shadal Fusion specifically is decent, when your opponent controls an extra deck monster and you want to search it off Hedgehog. But I didn't feel like the times where that comes up were more relevant than the times where I hard draw Shaddoll Fusion and it's just kind of meh. So because of that, I didn't want to play Shaddoll Fusion, and it worked out totally fine. It could be something I play in the future depending on the format, but yeah. So I guess getting into the list, the first thing at the top is obviously the hand trap. So I play 3 Ash, 3 Skullmeister, 3 Gamma, and 1 Driver. So I think Ash is obviously the most versatile. I think Gamma is the most high impact. That's also consistently good. And a side note about Gamma, even though the idea is there that you sometimes need to set monsters, at the same time, Gamma is almost never dead in this deck because most of the time your board is either like completely open, like you're only setting back row and passing, or if you control an Ecclesia, you're probably getting that off Nadir Servant, and then you're already gaining so much value off Nadir Servant that having Gamma in hand typically doesn't matter, because you could just pitch it off that clone, worst case. So Gamma was really strong all weekend, 100%. And then Skullmeister was very much the awkward third child of the hand trap lineup. I did not want to play Droll because of the way my deck functions. I feel like you needed every single card to be relevant enough. And because of that, I didn't want to play Droll that would traditionally just be dead in some matchups, where like a deck like Drytron can easily get away with Droll because they don't need like every single card in order to win the game. I felt like it's a lot more relevant to have every card be live, and that's why I think Skullmeister was better than other cards. I also think that Bell is just not nearly as great right now. I think Skullmeister being able to stop Lich cards in grave, for example, Skullmeister being able to flat out stop a card like the Virtual World Kinglong is relevant. I think the interactions with Skullmeister against Drytron are way better right now than with Bell, so I definitely think Skullmeister is the correct choice. And it came out clutch. Not like the most, but it definitely like did a good job this weekend. I wasn't disappointed with Meister. Then we move on to the Shaddoll lineup. And the Shaddoll lineup, as you can tell, is very, very slim. Like, comparatively to most lists are either playing like 2 Wendy, 2 Squamata, and then the rest are like 3 Wendy, 3 Squamata, 2 Ariel, like, and then a ton of others. Like, but the way this deck functions specifically is that you're not really that concerned about getting access to your Shaddoll engine because you have so many methods of doing that anyways. Whether you're going Punishment to send App Cologne, which dumps Wendy, which then fetches Hedgehog, and then Hedgehog gets you access to Schism, or whatever other means. So because of that, and because I wasn't concerned about drawing a Shaddoll card, I wanted to cut the Shaddolls to the bare minimum as little as I can possibly go, because I specifically want to make sure I'm not clogging on Shaddolls. This deck's biggest problem by far is when you draw too many Shaddoll monsters. Like, at the Extravaganza, I didn't do so hot because I just got really unlucky with how I drew. Like, the last round, I drew 4 Shaddoll monsters, which was really unfortunate because I only play 7, and so very unlucky, but I mean, it happens. But at least this tournament, I didn't have that problem, and that's definitely due to the way I built the deck. So the Shaddoll lineup, I was definitely a fan of. The only thing I think people would also want to ask about is would I bump Squamata or Ariel up? No, again, I don't think it's that necessary. Even Ariel, which can be nice, it doesn't really come up because I can always just recur it off App Cologne. So I wasn't too worried about playing the second Ariel. So I definitely think, and like by that point, I'd rather just play another Squamata because that can get you to an engine boost, technically. So then we move on to the spells. So then, obviously, I think one of the most spicy things, definitely not Nadir Servant. That card is insane, though. In this deck specifically, I think this is not that Nadir Servant is not insane in other decks, but it's definitely the most insane in this deck specifically, just because it sends App Cologne, and you're playing a Shaddoll deck, which means App Cologne can do anything at that point. So I definitely think Nadir Servant is more insane in this deck than any other control deck, by far. And that can obviously change in the future depending on the extra deck monsters we get. But yeah, Nadir Servant crazy. I don't think I need to explain anything else other than dang, it's absurd. And then Duality. So this is definitely the thing I think that will probably catch people off guard the most. So what I found about this deck is, like I said earlier with Gamma, you're not really going to be special summoning or even just summoning turn 1. Like, the only time it comes up is when either A, you draw Nadir Servant, or B, you draw Ecclesia, or, like, worst case C, you don't have a way to trigger, like, you just have to set, like, a Wendy or something. You're not able to discard it off Dinomescus, or use Punishment, or whatever. And that's, like, the only case where Gamma becomes dead, but even then, I typically just hold Gamma and don't set the Wendy, because, like, I just give it a turn or two. And usually I'm able to get going from that point. For the traps, so this is obviously the most important part of the deck, but as you could tell from my hand trap lineup, I also was very scared of cards like Lightning Storm, because that's inherently a big problem with back row decks right now, is that it's easier to counter a back row deck than it is to counter a combo deck. And so that's one reason why my hand trap lineup is so high, is because, like, either... Like obviously they're not going to have Lightning Storm game 1, but like the point being that I don't lose to back row hate nearly as much. I guess I should mention this because I forgot to earlier. I find hand traps are very relevant right now because even like, so one way you can approach this format, which I don't think is as optimal, is let's say you're playing like Eldritch, you just play Solemn Strike and Divine Wrath, and then you're able to use counter traps to stop the Herald of Ultimateness. But the problem with that strategy is that you're exposing yourself very easily to losing just because they have so many follow-up resources. Like, for example, if you're playing... And, like, my deck doesn't struggle with that as much, but even then, like, it's so hard to come back, even if you have a way to Solemn Strike or Divine Wrath for your opponent's Ultimateness, just because they have so many resources that by that point. It's almost just unwinnable. So I felt like hand traps were the solution just to prevent them from getting too many resources and enabling you to make a comeback significantly easier. So, but yeah, so that's why I played a ton of hand traps, and it also diversifies your lineup, like post side when you're siding into a combo deck. It diversifies your hand lineup to where you have some hand traps and some back row instead of like all back row, which I find pretty relevant. But yeah, so anyways, that's like I'm long spieling a lot, but anyways. So we play 3 Trap Trick because it gets you access to your entire engine. I play 3 Punishment, definitely the most important card in the deck, in my opinion, just because like even if Nadir Servant is limited, like this deck is still playable even if that happens. The only thing that, like, it's just a consistency hit, right? But, like, you're still able to do everything this deck already does. The only thing that actually could kill this deck immediately is if they limit Punishment specifically, because then, like, you can't even get it access to it off Trap Trick. And sure, you can get Sinister, but, like, Punishment is just so insane in this deck that limiting it, like, in my opinion at least, like, just the way the deck functions, you need all 3 Punishments. I've seen some Trap doll lists play only 2 Punishment. I definitely think that's just incorrect if you're playing Trap Trick, because Punishment is just such a huge consistency piece, and it's very relevant sometimes to be able to have access to all 3. If you need for example, Trap Trick out of Punishment, and then you need an Ecclesia search, it can be game-changing to have the 3rd one, so yeah. So, I don't know, I'm rambling on about a lot of this stuff, even though, like, it seems obvious at first, but I thought I might as well give as much insight as possible. So, yeah, so Trap Trick, Punishment. Sinister is amazing, dude. Oh my god, send any Shaddoll card, which includes Res Shaddoll. And then the flip face up isn't always relevant, but it definitely can be sometimes. But, like, generally speaking, it's not that relevant, I'm going to be honest. It's just the fact that you can foolish any Shaddoll is very relevant. It's also very important to be able to do this because the biggest difference between Punishment and Sinister is Sinister is a proactive card. It can be reactive, but it is a card that is proactive when your opponent doesn't give you the option to be reactive.
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is punishment is a card that inherently requires your opponent to already be playing the game for it to work. And sure, most of the time that works, but sometimes if your opponent doesn't summon a monster and they pass, if you don't play Sinister Shadow Games and you have something like Trap Trick, you can your engine going. And this just inherently will buy your opponent more turns to play the game, which you do not want to do in a control deck. You want to try to take advantage of the game as fast as possible. And so that's why Sinister, in my opinion, is so good, because it doesn't rely on your opponent to be good. Even though, like, again, punishment's insane because it's a disruption that, while requires your opponent to play the game, it's almost any scenario that they're playing the game, you can punish. So it's just, like, I think it's an important thing to comment on because it does come up. So definitely play Shadow Games. Obviously, it's good all. Then we get to the 2-ofs, and I think generally speaking, 2-ofs, like I've sometimes had the mentality that 2-ofs are fine, and like even if they're not searchable, but like generally speaking, it is never correct to play a 2-of if it's unsearchable. Like, so like 2-of Desires is never correct. And I hate to break that to anybody, but like you physically should always realistically be playing 3 Desires. And the only exception is like a deck like Sky Striker, where technically speaking, because they engage so often, it is much more likely to draw into multiple Desires. And it makes your engage less impactful. So there's technically a reason to play 2 of it in a deck like that, but like generally speaking, I think you should only be playing a 2-of if there's an actual reason for it. And fortunately, this isn't just me being stupid. We do have a reason for it because they're specifically searchable off Trap Trick. So I only played 2 Dynamiscus, 2 IDP. I wanted to keep my deck at 40 cards, but to do that, I needed to cut down on both the IDP and Dynamiscus. And some decks can get away with playing above 40. Technically, this deck can. But I personally felt like I wanted to see Nadir Servant as often as possible. And because Nadir Servant is just so high impact, even though I don't play Upstart, I just don't have the room for Upstart. And otherwise I'd be playing more Dynamiscus, and especially IDP. Yeah. Even though it's not like that crazy against Drytron. Which, speaking of... So yeah, Dynamiscus is very relevant. Being able to banish, of course, is very relevant. And then the other very important thing about it is that it can get Shaddolls out of your hand that isn't just punishment. So moving to the extra deck. And again, my apologies, I've been rambling so much this deck profile, but hopefully you guys learn a ton from it. So 3 App Cologne. It is literally the extra deck card that ties this deck together. 2 Construct, 2 Winda. So I only missed the 3rd Construct once, but I don't think I would put the 3rd Construct in right now. I don't think it's necessary when your game plan is very specifically on Schism. And the 2 Winda, you never need the 3rd Winda, because you either need the 1st Winda and then the 2nd one is just a luxury that can help you. Like let's say, for example, I'm playing against Drytron, make Winda, then next turn I'm able to link off my Winda, and then on their turn I summon the 2nd Winda and win. So you need at least 2 Winda, but the 3rd never comes up because the matchup where Winda is good is specifically a combo matchup, but because it is inherently a combo matchup, it never gets to the point where you need the 3rd Winda versus the 3rd Construct coming up in a control matchup where that can actually be. So, yeah. Then I played Elder Entity Ints. You need 1 of it, but to be frank, I think I used Ints like once or twice this tournament. It definitely comes up, don't get me wrong, but like it's not that, like it's not the most important thing in the world, but you should still play it 100% at 1. And then Super Dimensional Robot Galaxy Destroyer. So there is a specific reason for this. This is like the insane tech card. Oh my god, no one saw the heavy storm effects coming. No, but so there is one. Shout outs to Mr. Borealis Ryan over here.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to play a 5k attack monster, and technically this is the best one
because it is a light fusion or a light exceeds monster board, which both means you can use this for a construct, and it is an exceeds that plays around invocation banishing a fusion. So yes, technically this is the best 5k monster. That was obviously the best card in my extra deck. I summoned it like every single game. So moving on, we got Boreal Sword. So another question people may have is why play Boreal Sword over Selena access code? So Boreal Sword is very important, like in the fact that it just does more damage than access code. The ability to pop cards is very irrelevant in a deck like this, where even though you could like get 2 pops, like the difference in damage is just so like apparent, especially when like a lot of the time you have a Beast and Boreal Sword on board, which is 82 versus the 70 or versus the what is it? It would be like 7,500 you get with access code. So access code just doesn't do enough damage, and that's why you play Boreal Sword. So, and I mean, Boreal Sword, like, the OTK does actually come up. Like, it's very relevant in this deck, just to seal games outright. Unicorn is definitely, like, not necessary, in my opinion. I think it came up once, but it was never, like, game-winning when it was. I just played it just because technically you could summon it in unison with a card like Cross Sheep. But, like, I didn't feel like I ever needed Unicorn to win. I just also wanted like a generic Link 3, and I felt like Unicorn was probably the best option, considering its flexibility. So I do play Shaddoll Construct. This card is relevant in some scenarios. For example, when you draw very monster heavy, Shaddoll Construct is a card that can actually just unbreak you and potentially win you a game that you couldn't have otherwise. And so when you draw a very monster heavy construct is relevant to get you access to your fusions. And then otherwise, I don't think it was that relevant this weekend. But yeah, I summoned it a few times, don't get me wrong, and it was definitely good when I had it. It's just like I don't think there is anything else to bring up about it. I think you play Cross Sheep. I mean, like I made this so many times for the Boreal Sword.
Yeah, this card's nice.
Otherwise, yeah, Cross Sheep's crazy. Like, otherwise, I don't think it came up that much. Like, the only times it came up was either I was doing the OTK with Boreal Sword, or I was making Unicorn. But yeah, I mean, Cross Sheep's like, oh, so good. And then one Artemis. This card surprisingly didn't come up as much as I thought it would in the tournament. In this tournament specifically, at least. But it is still like mandatory in the deck now that it exists, just because you can turn any Shaddoll like Hedgehog into a light, and that gives you more fodder for your system. So it's very relevant in that sense. And then Gravity Controller, I mean, like easily the best Link monster in the extra deck, most important by far. I mean, what more can I say? It triggers your Shaddoll graveyard effects with your fusion, so. And then the side deck, so I definitely wanted to make sure I was prepared for both the rogue combo deck, because I personally, like, I played on DB Ladder a good amount with this deck whenever I did test, and I played a lot of rogue combo, so I didn't want to go completely unprepared besides what I had, and I wanted to make sure I was prepared for VW, but somehow I just didn't play any VW, which was still very weird, but yeah, so... It was pretty good. I don't think it was like the most crazy thing ever, but it did enough, I guess. Like I wouldn't cut it unless I play a different hand trap over it. But yeah, it was fine. And then oh my god, this card's so good. If you're not playing Droll for Drytron, you should be playing Cycle Reader or something, because I mean it's just like it will win you games outright because of how good it is. So
yeah.
And then for the rest of the side deck, so there were 2 specific goals I had with this deck for siding. Or 3, I guess. One of them was to be prepared for combo even harder post-side. The second one was I wanted to make sure that I had something that gave me a lot of value in the control matchups. Because I personally think that for a control matchup, the Eldritch cards are generally speaking higher quality than the Shaddoll cards because every trap will be a constant card every single turn, whereas like punishment is only a card for like one, like in that moment, or like gets you the hedgehog, but like that's not the same as like a Scarlet Sanguine, which gets you Lord, and the next turn it gets you another trap, and the next turn it's another trap. So I do think Eldritch is higher quality in that sense, but I think because Ariel exists in general, you're actually able to, like, you have a favorite Eldritch matchup just because they have no effective manner of dealing with the proactive ability of Ariel. So,
Yeah.
like, there were so many times where I just banished both their lords and they just straight out lose because they couldn't win from there. Because all their Eldritch cards just become like fake cards at that point. But otherwise, I wanted like some value tool in the control matchups, and I think Stormduster is the best one for that. Personally, if I change my siding patterns, I may cut Stormduster to 2. It wasn't like as insane as it has been in testing, but it was fine. But I definitely could consider cutting it down to 2 to play like a third anti-spell, because anti-spell was insane. But yeah, so 2 Stormduster may be correct moving forward, just because like you can still search it off Trap Trick. But yeah, so then the last 6 were 3 Solemn Judgment, 2 Anti-Spell, 1 Order. Oh my god, these cards were so clutch. They were very essential. Like, you to have counters to mass back row hate like Lightning Storm, just because there's so many people able to just freely use a Lightning Storm. Like, you have to be prepared for 4 Harpies Feather Dusters in the format, and that's why Judgment, I mean, overall is the best, but like Anti-Spell and Order also are just insane. Turn off all your opponent's spells. So, but yeah, like I said, I'd probably bump Anti-Spell to 3 and cut a Stormduster. But that's probably like the main change, and then like I change other stuff depending on testing. And like when Disparity comes up, the deck shifts as well. But yeah, that was my very in-depth tournament experience. So,
Thank you for the in-depth analysis. I think the deck's really interesting. I've played tested against this before, or in like OTS locals, and the deck is pretty wild. The Schism, the Reincarnation, to be able to like keep getting more advantage. It's a very nice deck, and Windows pretty nice against these combo decks. But yeah, thank you so much, man. We are going to move on to Ryan, who was piloting Dragon Link.
Had to unmute the mic.
Yeah, no worries.
All right. So I also want to give another shout out. Shout out to the Illusory Gentleman on DB. He hit number 1 with this recently, although Flaming Ice I think overtake him today. But it's pretty much his list from YouTube, just with a few changes to suit my personal needs and stuff I thought would be better for the event. So he goes over a lot of theory in his YouTube video on his channel. Just type in Illusory Gentleman Dragons and it should pop up. But I really like the way this deck plays. So Dragon Link before was a hard combo deck where you use literally 13 cards in your extra deck to end on a board that was just less impactful than Nobles. The only thing you had was an extra deck link over them. But now you use maybe like half of that, and you end on like a board that's more resilient, and make sure you don't die so you can Boral Sword OTK next turn.
Yeah.
On top of having hand traps. So I like this pick for the event because since combo isn't as oppressive, like think about it. Combo is like 1 VFD and a pop, or like Herald and a bunch of negates. It's like one thing, or like one mass thing with a protection. You know, nothing is really like as oppressive. Like you can throw like maybe 2 hand traps to stop BW or Drytron depending on their hand. So combo feels a little bit more fair now. Same thing with this deck. This deck can push through 1 to 2 hand traps and still make like spheres and a hand trap, or spheres and tidying. So the usual end board with the deck is Savage Spheres and a tidying. But if you open the extra extender, you can usually summon Brotor, or like a piece of the engine. Like if you open the Dragon Maid part or the Rocket part or another way of it, you make start Yugioh, and you're able to summon Brotor search Levineer. So you get a Levineer rip on top of it. And usually the Levineer kind of sits there, and it's just this like big body that just stares down the opponent as you get ready to OTK them next turn. So deck was pretty nice. Hand trap lineup is pretty simple. It's just Nib, Gamma, and Ash. I was expecting a lot more VW this tournament, so I didn't change his hand trap ratio. VW I thought was the best deck for the event, so I thought I should play to beat that deck. And all these have impact against Drytron as well. And arguably Ash, and to a very lesser extent Gamma, has some misses versus some of the Roger decks too. The big thing about Gamma is it's a light for Chaos Space, so it facilitates your engine while being a pretty decent hand trap in your own right. Like, I drew Driver one time, and I'm like, cool, I'm glad this Driver's in my hand. Previously unsaid sentences in human history. Yeah, let's get into it. So we got for the combo portion, we got the one router. The one router is there as a send-off of Dragon Ravine to search the piece of your engine. So the idea part of this deck is Dragon Ravine that you search off Romulus is going to like basically bridge the gap between the engines. If you draw a Dragon Maid, you can send it and then send something else. If you draw the trap card, you can pitch the trap and then send Chamber, and Chamber's going to search you Hospitality. You can search a rocket piece. You can get Brotor in the grave to revive it with Pisty. So essentially, Dragon Ravine vinges the gap between pretty much all the engines. Then you got your white and your black dragon. Pretty much, those are standard. They're at 1. They're essentially a 1-card combo, but in this deck, you need combo plus extender now in order to be able to do it.
Yeah.
So Chaos Space facilitates that and gets you wherever you need to go. Like, it's kind of sad. It's not 1-card combo anymore, but you're still able to do what you need to do. Then the best card in the deck, in my opinion, is Chamber. So there's an argument for Chamber versus Parlor, because Parlor doesn't lose to Droll, but I'm not trying to push and make a hard combo board. I'm trying to push and make a board that's resilient to hand traps and guarantees I don't die the last turn. Like, playing Dragon Maid a lot in like lower power formats I play with my friends, I've learned that like spheres plus like a negate pass is really, really good and impactful. And you don't die through a bounce, another bounce with the trap, a body off the spheres, and the Savage on top of whatever hand traps you drew. So you're able to operate on like sort of the Axis VW is, where it's not really like this hard combo deck, but it's more of a mid-range toolboxy idea where you're able to go into stuff to out other stuff as well.
Yeah.
One Levy, you don't need more than one. Like I said, 9 hand traps. Brotor's a combo piece to search your extra piece. Like, I remember I discarded and I searched. I'm trying to remember. I know I did something stupid with it. I like discarded Driver to search Gamma to get a Light Engrave, just so I could like have a pop with Levineer. One Nocto because it's a nice, cool random extender. And I think he talks about a little bit of the math where you play like a certain number of extenders versus starters. You know, same old, same old. Plus, it's not as great anymore because like you're not trying to chain block Romulus, because you can still make most of your board without Romulus. It's just a little less so. Then for the Rockets, there's 1 Recharger, 2 Synchron, and 2 Tracer. So there's a play with Rocket Synchron that's kind of funny. So you see that we're playing like Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss in the extra deck. So in a grind game, you can add it back, normal summon it, summon Savage or Chaos Ruler from your extra deck, and then make the Abyss. And it's another negate that gives you a follow-up. And it summons a tuner from grave in defense mode. So it gives you even more bodies and field presence while still applying pressure and giving you a negate. 2 Tracer because you want your normal summon to be on like another dragon, or just it's one of those where it's not as impactful as it used to be. Then of course the 1 Recharger. 1 Safer because sometimes you can summon it off of the Levineer or the you can summon it off of LP and then get yourself the Levineer back from the grave. There were times where I would like send it and banish it with the Chaos Dragon that I searched, like the little babies. Yeah. And then I would put it back with the Pisty to get it back into play, and then have the Levineer for next turn, because you just end with the Levineer in your hand and pop 2. Then that's it for the monster lineup. Then of course Boot Sector and Ravine, your 2 good field spells. Not much to say about those. In top 16, I thought I was gonna lose for sure, but fortunately for me, Paul's hand wasn't as great. Shout out to Paul Cooper. He gave me a Soul Charge for 2 from Grave with this thing. And this card's literally just a soul charge, and it just won me the game from there. One Call by the Grave, that's the only real change from the main deck from Illusion Gentleman's list. I just wanted the card, and it came up like once or twice. It's cool, I guess. 3 Chaos Space. You kind of lose to Droll. Like, Droll hurts more on this than on Striker Dragon. Because honestly, like, this is one of those cards where it's a very high reward if it goes off, but you lose harder to Droll. But my thing is, this deck's, I don't want to say it sort of loses to Droll because it contradicts the statement I said earlier, but by playing a deck that has a weakness to Droll, you're already going to lose to Droll. So why would you not just want to maximize the high impact cards you play? 1 copy of Hospitality. It's an extender off of Chamber, like if you need to start your combo.
Mm-hmm.
You can also just go Banish Trap on your opponent's turn or your turn. Special it, Search Hospitality, that's another 2 bodies to help OTK. 1 Reborn, self-explanatory. 3 Quick Launch, self-explanatory. 3 Guard Dragon. This card was funny because I played against a Sky Striker player, and he gave me an arrow with Shizuku, and then I brought back a dragon, made Pisty, then moved it, used his arrow, and I just went off and killed him. Then 2 Tidying. Oh my god, this card is insane. It's literally like a trap card and a disruption and an extender. It's insane. My god. So that's it for the main. I don't know if you have any questions, Grim.
Yeah, so I saw Nats play this deck, and yeah, Dragon Lake's still good. He played through like 2 Torrentials, and he's playing Chambers as well, and the trap's just really nice and helps like recurse the engine, but the deck doesn't have to do that much now to still win the game, because on the turn 2 you still have some kind of advantage to be able to put yourself back into the game with like LP, Guard Dragon combos, etc. But the main piece of the board, the seal with the Savage and the trap, I think is very nice. It's definitely controlling enough to where you can basically just win the game by just those interruptions. So I definitely like the deck, and it was a very good idea.
Moving on to the extra.
Yep.
So, of course, we got our 3 Synchros. We got Savage, self-explanatory. We got Hot Red Dragon Archfiend. I already talked about that. That card's nuts. I only summoned it like once, but it's just a big power play and kind of a flex when you do it. And the card that, like, really, like, stood out was Chaos Ruler. I started playing around with it, and the card is just really, really nice. Just being able, like, let's say you can't really make a Savage, or you find the opportunity to go for this card. The amount of pressure this applies by being able to come back from the grave and also searching you a potential starter or extender. I can't tell you, like, the probably 4 times I've summoned it, each one of them got what I needed. I either milled a light, a dragon follow-up, or the extender I needed. And just having it in the grave is just this big body that just sits there and just pretty much pressures your opponent with him because they know it's going to come back next turn. Like, sometimes you need, like, an extra big body to kill your opponent with sword. So this is the big body you need. I'd say the only core problem with this deck is getting lights in grave, because there were some awkward times where I would, like, activate space with a darken hand, and I'm like, oh, well, I don't have a target for this.
Mm-hmm.
But it's there. It exists. Not much to say about that. Then moving on to the links, we got Boral Sword, Halk, self-explanatory. So Dill is there because if you need to get your Guard Dragons off the board, so essentially there's like a play where if you're really pressured, you can use LP to meet your Guard Dragon requirements. Keep resolving Guard Dragons and getting value. You have to link off your Romulus or whatever's in the extra monster zone, into Dill, because it gets you because it gets it off the board. So it's a dark link too that you can just make that also just can randomly like do stuff for you. Like, I brought it back one time after summoning a Tracer, and it was like the extra link fodder I needed to make a Boral Sword, and sometimes it's like randomly comes up. Honestly, what's this other effect? During your opponent's end phase? Yeah, I don't think anyone in the history of Yu-Gi-Oh! Has ever used that.
Probably not.
And Romulus, it's essentially kind of like the new Double Helix, I guess. It's like the combo starter that kind of like revolves around you being able to make your plays. It's nice. It really is. Then the Guard Dragons, LP Pisty, self-explanatory, 2 spheres. The second one maybe came up like once, but if you're grinding with this deck really bad, you need the extra Peach to control. Came up. It's the one flex spot. I was considering maybe putting access code, but it's just nice to have. Honestly, it's one of those cards where I'm a little bit of a. I don't want to say that word. I like to have a safety net. You know, I like to be able to say, well, my opponent flips a floodgate, and I happen to have like 2 monsters that meet the requirements. I can make Phoenix. Like if I have, I don't know, Driver and a Dragon or Ash, I can be only one. It's just a safety net. Saryuja, so you don't always make Saryuja, but Saryuja's designed to dig into your deck. Like there are hands where you just be like, I can play greedy because I can still make Savage Spheres or like Spheres plus like. 11-year rip and a bounce.
Yeah.
So it's a dragon and it like draws you 4. So why not? You can draw hand traps. It's what won me my top 16 match. Unfortunately, we didn't make it past top 16, but I did win my match because game 1 I drew into Nibiru and Ash and the extender I needed. So it's pretty nice. And 2 striker dragon. The only thing that like I would really want to change is maybe take out Phoenix for a 3rd striker because there were a lot of times where you go through 2 turn 1. And you're just like, wow, I wish I had this follow-up with the, Striker Dragon for Recharger to apply pressure to some of the bodies.
Yeah, Recharger is really good.
It's nice. But it's one of those, it's a preference thing.
Fair.
That's it for the extra. Then moving on to the side, you have your 3 Cycle Reader. It's probably the best hand trap against Drytron besides Droll. But the thing is, Drytron can set up bodies, and this deck isn't like Drytron where you can just push through all your opponent's bodies and then set up a Herald.
Yeah.
Like, your board doesn't automatically beat Drytron. It puts everything back and sets them back a turn so you can sword OTK next turn. But if you roll them on their turn 1, they're going to summon like Linkuriboh or an Appaloosa, and that's kind of hard to play through. So you want Cycle Reader to be able to grind with them and take out their resources. And it can be a turn skip if you play it correctly. 3 Lancia because I was fearing VW. I played no VW this whole tournament, and I guess I'm fortunate because that's probably one of this deck's hardest matchups. Your hand traps, while impactful, they can still play through if they open well enough. Max showed me that. And then 3 Bell. Bell is so you have 15 hand traps after sighting versus Drytron and Bell. Drytron and VW. You take out like a little bit of each engine. And then you have 15 hand traps after sighting. And all you need to do is just make a spheres or like do some kind of a play, set up another disruption, and go. Then next turn sword OTK. 1 copy of Drago. Drago's cool. I never got to summon it because the 2 Drytrons I played, they both opened super nuts and I didn't get to play it. But the theory is when Drytron commits their normal, you just spheres the normal and summon Drago. And you have you usually have a Savage or a 11-year or an extra Dragon sitting there on top of Tidying. So you're able to just bounce if they have another way to get a monster on the board. And then on your turn, you just link it off into, like, something. You just basically sit on it or out it, or you Tidying back at end phase. Like, there's ways to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Or, like, Tracer Pop it. No, you can't do that. But you get the idea. Then there's the 5 back row cards. Honestly, Storm realistically should be Cyclone because you can play through 1 to 2 just like straight macro disruptions as long as it's not like straight up Judgment or Strike. But the reason I was thinking about Cyclone was Schism exists, and so does and so does the Chuche. So when I was playing, I Lightning Stormed a Chadal player.
Yeah.
This is one of the games that I ended up losing. We won, but we played it out, and he still flipped Schism and made a window. And I'm like, well, I don't really have a way to deal with this on the board. So I think Cyclone would have been better. Shout out to Lizard Gentleman. He plays Dark Heart.
Insane.
It just flexes on everybody. But that's pretty much it for the deck. It performed really well, and I'm happy I played it. It's a combo deck I can actually play because my tiny brain can't really fathom how to play some other ones. So, yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, thank you so much. I really like the deck. I do like the Dragon Ruler or Chaos Ruler, whatever, how you want to say it. But, yeah, you can also, like, add Lancia to hand and stuff, which is kind of crazy. But you also said you didn't play any Virtual World, so that part didn't really matter. But, yeah, thanks so much, man. And we're going to move on to Matt, who is piloting Virtual World.
Hey there, guys. I'm Matthew. This was my very fun Dragon Turbo. One of the first things that you'll see, which if this were a DB Grinder video, he would say 41. You hate to see it, is right that I'm running 41 cards, the Raphael Nevin number. So for a long while now, thank you to the WAF guys for basically optimizing VW. But 31 of the 41 cards that are in my list are considered mandatory, standard, and the other 9 to 10 slots are for hand traps, whatever tech cards you want. Which realistically, 2 of the hand traps that are in the main deck being 100% mandatory means that realistically 38 of your main deck slots are mandatory, and then the other 2 or 3 slots in my case end up being your tech hand trap, which you will see down the line. So to start off, what is it? So I chose Datascape for this event because specifically, right, ever since the end of last LCS when Kugan won, I picked up the deck. I started learning more. I talked over deck theory and learned a lot of the combos thanks to Nesh and also Jibril, but predominantly Nesh. So let's kick this off with the BW names. So we'll start off. I ran three of the Roshi, 3 Kirin Lily, 3 Nyan Nyan, 3 Lulu, 3 Gigi, and 3 of each gates, Kinglong, Kowloon, and Chuche. Right. This deck, famously has a consistency issue. Mathematically, we were able to raise the consistency through some of the cards that you'll see later in the list. But mathematically, 1 in 6 games, this deck loses to itself. To where ideally, right, you want to run as many names as possible because most of the combos, right, they're all 2 to 3 card combos. So to go next, for the other mandatory non-VW cards, we have Teleport, which just becomes a copy of Lulu or Nyan Nyan, which can get your plays going if you only open Teleport plus 1 name, or just an extender to be able to make one of our anti-Nibiru cards down in the extra deck for later. You have 3 goods. This is also for raising consistency. This is super important. There are a bunch of combos that go along with goods plus a name, or even Kowloon plus goods, because of the Chow Fang that you'll see down in the extra deck. And lastly, 3 desires. Right, as Blade mentioned before in his profile, right, mathematically there's never a reason to run 2. Right, Nyan Nyan can always recur, face down banished cards. Sometimes it comes back against you, whether it be like banishing multiple copies of Kinglong, or banishing multiple Chuches. But luckily, what was it, back in testing, I was having some pretty bad desires banishes, but there were multiple clutch matches in Swiss where I desired and I didn't banish any Kinglong or Chuche, and I was very happy. So main deck, I was very happy with the cards. Like I said, it's almost completely solved. Would you like me to go down to side or extra first?
You can pick.
Okay, I guess I'll go with side, because there's only one super spicy tech card at the end, but we'll start off 3 Lancia. This is necessary for the mirror post side, right, because luckily you see it in my list, and also most of the lists that ended up doing well at the event, nobody's playing tactics anymore. So in the mirror, you shotgun this in the standby phase, and you shotgun this in the standby phase, and if they have the gamma for it, you just hope that you have the Ash or your own gamma. And if Lancia resolves in the mirror, that you have to put them on Better Have It. Their only ways of making VFD through Lancia normally, or if in the mirror, is if your opponent opens exactly Neon Lulu and Lala, or GG Lulu and Lala. Okay. Next card is 3 Ally of Justice Cycle Reader. This card is, other than Droll, one of the best cards against Drytron. This card is insane. Also, fun fact, it being a level 3 tuner turns it into a combo piece in this deck, because there are, say if you open multiples, which I actually did this one once during the tournament, is you normal it and you turn it and a 6 into Vermilion. There was one of my games where I banished 2 King Longs and I had the other one in hand, and I normaled a Cycle Reader, linked with it on Synchro 9 for Vermilion, and popped my own King Long to try to play the game. Next, we have 3 Ghost Bell. Arguably, this was... Okay, in theory, this was to be able to help my matchup against more like back row decks like Eldritch, right? Because Ash plus Bell is just more copies of Ash Blossom against Eldritch, because you stop, because you stop their Sanguine, and it also stops cards like Nadir. But arguably, this would be the card. This was the card in my side that underperformed the most. I would definitely end up taking this out, and tech card at the end. After the tournament, like Skullmeister or even Imperm. I can say why Imperm later. Next, we do not like losing to back row decks. Even though this deck, because some extra deck toolbox cards can sometimes ignorantly play into back row, right? I have 2 Lightning Storm, Harpy's Feather Duster, and Red Reboot. Storm in testing, before I was using Twin Twister, but I found in testing that the discard was extremely detrimental, and Storm, it was explained most simply to me by Aaron McInnes, that why would you not run multiple copies of Harpy's Feather Duster in your deck? So I ended up changing it to Storm just a couple weeks ago, and I chose to keep it for the event. Feather Duster is Duster. It's just it's ignorant. And I played. I don't think I got anti-spelled once this event, to where I never really wished that it was like Cosmic or Twin. And then Reboot is just Reboot. It's limited for a reason. It's unfair. It allows you to play ignorantly into back row decks. Next, the last 2 slots in my side deck are the only 2 cards that I would side going first. The first being Called by the Grave. Post side, you just put this in against... You put this in when you're going first post side against every deck, right? You side in Lancia. If they're more like a mid-range deck, and they're also running cards like Meister, and then, basically every deck should be running Ash, unless they're some like extremely heavy trap deck that just doesn't gain value from Ash. This always goes in. And my last card, the tech card that I chose, this is one Mischief of the Gnomes. You put this in against the Virtual World Mirror. I originally was going to run Orchest Crescendo, because Orchest Crescendo, along with Goods, post side against Drytron, turns your 3 Cycle Readers into 6 copies of Cycle Reader. But I found that post side, right, because against Drytron, when they're putting in Lancia for you, you just take out your Goods and Desires, and I was putting in Cycle Reader Bell, to where post side that matchup was, sorry if it sounds like loading, but that matchup was free, to where I felt like Gnomes was Gnomes was the correct choice, because post side Mirror was harder to deal with than Drytron.
Yeah.
Any questions before we move on to extra?
Most of the deck's been pretty much standardized.
Soft, yeah.
Yeah. The only thing I saw that I think I saw you play one of your matches, and the Mistress of the Gnomes is pretty insane. I also saw people playing Beatrice and sending this as well, which was kind of funny.
Oh yes.
Yeah, but I really like it. It's a good deck choice.
Thank you. Okie dokie. On to the extra deck. So first off, we have one AA Negalogia Zeus. This card fantastic. You just slap. Going second, you're able to slap this over one of. Normally, it's one of your rank 3s, predominantly Fortune Tune, which we'll get to later. And it just allows you to. It allows you to clear back row so well, and it allows you to take games that without this card you would have no means of winning.
Yeah.
Next, we have 2 of the namesake of this deck, True King of All Calamities, very fun dragon. This card warps the format. This card is, even though, okay, we've been doing some testing, post ban of VFD and or, with no VFD, but for now, the deck, this is one of the biggest reasons, if not the reason, to play VW over any of the other decks this format. It's game changing. It's fantastic. Next, number 39, Utopia Beyond. So, I wanted to keep this in, even though I know that a fair bit of people have been choosing to cut it and or run the rank 9, the Phantom Fortress, Enter Blathmir, because I wanted a conventional Dragoon out that also what is it? So in your mainline combo and or in your save combo, the bread and butter Kowloon Lulu combo, you always end with a Lily Engrave in the end, to where I wanted an easy rank 6 to be able to summon turn 3, just to go for kill shot very easily. I ended up actually summoning this pretty often. I only played against 2 decks that ran Dragoon, so it only came up as a Dragoon out once, but it's just nice to have and know that, activate Lao Lao becomes game
Yeah.
on turn 3. Next, Ptolemy 7. This was one of, if not the best card in my extra deck, other than VFD, and we'll get down the line later, but it'll be Vermilion. I believe it was round 6 against Dinosaur. I chose to end on M7 instead of ending with VFD because I opened Lancia against him, to where I just added back my Lancia and Lancia'd him again. This also comes up for plays where like if you gamma your opponent but then you don't have other names, or like your only other name is a 6 like a Lily, to where you Lily dump whatever monster you need, like it's predominantly Lulu, and then you make the M7 using the driver and the Lily, add back that Lulu to where you circumvent. Basically, you're just able to get that resource to where you can keep comboing. Next off, Fortune Tune. So, in the Drytron deck, they run one of the Lyrilusc assembled Nightingale, the bird, to guarantee Zeus, or that Fucho card. Fortune Tune's basically the Fucho card, but for this deck, it can't be targeted. So cards like your opponent's Chuche and cards like Dryden against the Zoo Eldritch deck don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
It also has a Dingirsu effect, to where cards like Honk don't matter. This is predominantly what you're summoning going second to turbo into the Zeus. Next, number 75, this is our anti-Nibiru card. This comes up. You always, with the standard combo, you summon this as your 5th summon, to where your opponent can't Nibiru you, or they're forced to have like Nibiru plus another card. Onto the Synchros. Chao Feng. This is easily one of the best cards in the extra deck. Shoutouts to Nash and the WAF guys for essentially inventing the combos with this card. Even if you look in the OCG, they're not running this card. But A, that's because they're not running goods. But B, I guess they just didn't take the time to innovate. One change that I made a couple weeks ago, which is next, is adding a second Cloud Castle. Double Cloud Castle is insane. I don't know how I played the deck for so long with only one Cloud Castle. Most of the double VFD combos come up because of double Cloud Castle. And against a fair bit of decks, especially like Drytron and the Mirror, double VFD in most instances is just a game. And if you open well enough, you can even end on 75 with double VFD. So shout out to Cloud Castle. Croco. This card comes up. I only summoned it like twice, but unironically against back row decks, what is it? If they side, this is going to sound funny. If they side Waking the Dragon, your only out in your entire deck to Waking the Dragon and summoning Ultimate Falcon is a Crocosaur with 5 or more cards in hand. Other than that, you have no out in your deck. It didn't come up, but the draw effect is nice.
Yeah.
Being able to quick play pop, self-explanatory. Vermilion is the next card. This is the toolbox combo card MVP. Even though Chao Feng is good, I summon this way more than Chao Feng this tournament. Just being able to go 75 and then Vermilion, banish Lao Lao, pop itself, add back Lao Lao, and then just go off is very nice. Next, Shen Shen. This is the back row deck destroyer. This is the Eldritch and Shadow destroyer. It being a large body, it being able to constantly recur itself turn after turn in a grind, triggering Neon, setting banishes up for the trap. It's too good. Yugioh. This card was pretty solid. I actually won a mirror match that I should not have because my opponent did not read the first effect of Yugioh. I had made an indestructible Yugioh and he tried Chuche popping it when I believe GG targeted it, and I had shown the first effect of Yugioh because I had Neon Lulu engraved. Next, Charge Warrior. Same as Croco. This is just to regain hand advantage. The second effect, the second effect of being able to attack all special summon monsters in tandem with Utopia Beyond that OTK didn't come up for me, but it's nice. To be able to run second Cloud and run Croco, I did have to cut one Synchros 6, which is, you see, there's an absence of Coral Dragon in this list. Coral Dragon only came up in, I believe, 2 of the specific combos, and that's if you open GG Neon or GG Neon or like GG King Long Neon, where you would make Coral, and it's important that it's Coral because your non-tuner plus the Coral gets you to the Vermilion to play. But other than that, right, the list was super standard. The main deck, I wouldn't change anything from the event, but the side deck, like I said, Bell underperformed the most, and I'd probably cut Gnomes. For that in the future would be 2 Meister, 2 Imper. Quick rundown of the matches. Round 1, I played a Mirror. Game 1, I got a game loss because I accidentally entered with a different deck. I entered round 1 table with Lyrilusk Tri-Brigade, and I noticed after I drew my hand for turn, I was like, oh, wrong deck, and I leave and switch my deck, and then Toast, fantastic head judge, shout outs to Adnan, said, oh, okay, that's a game loss. But then game 2, I just set up double VFD, and he activates Desires, draws 2, and immediately scoops, and because I see that just that line of play, I've played a lot of Mirror, I side in Lancia because I figure, oh, okay, this is probably Mirror, and standby phase, I Lancia him, and then he just picks up his cards.
It's crazy.
Round 2, I played against Drytron. That was a Swift 2-0. Game 1, I opened Droll Gamma combo. Game 2, I opened Cycle Reader Droll combo. Round 3 was Rocks against Blake Thunderbird. That was a very good match. I lost game 1 because my only hand trap was Ash. Game 2, I double VFD him. Game 3, my only hand trap is Bell. He sets up Savage, Abyss Dweller, and Lambda with Gamma in hand, and I'm able to play through it and Fortune Tune Zeus him while keeping the Bell in hand for later, for a potential signs, because he allows my dissolve, and one of my draws is Kowloon, to where he negates my first King Long, and then I Kowloon for another King Long, and then I negate the Lambda. Round 4 was a mirror. That went 2-1. That was really grindy. Round 5 was my only loss in Swiss. I ended 7-1. That was to Shadal Dogmatica invoked, and game 1, I got Drolled and Belled, and then game 2, I got Gamma Lancia, and he had Alistair and Shadal fusion. Yes, that was a swift loss. That was like 15 minutes. Round 6, Dragoon Dinosaur. I lose RPS, but I have Gamma Ash, and then a combo. Game 2, he ends up winning, and then game 3 is the game that I told you about, where instead of ending on VFD 75, I end on M7 add back Lancia 75. And then he just can't play the game because Dinosaur with no Misc and no Pill is not a Dinosaur deck. Round 7, I play against Invoked Dragoon. This was the only round that I hard bricked 2 games in a row, games 2 and 3. But luckily, my opponent bricked 2, so that was nice. The only reason why I lost game 2 was because in simplified games, right, we both have hard bricks. We passed for like 3 turns. He top decks into the Red Eyes fusion, and then I just lose. Round 8, I play against Hand Trap Burning Abyss. That was 2-1. That was really weird matchup to see. Game 1, I double VFD. He doesn't show deck info, so game 2, I side Cycle Reader in. And unironically, it hits Dante, but I still ended up losing because I opened like hand traps, like not combo. And then game 3, just smooth sailing. Top 16, I end up losing game 3 to Zodiac Dogma invoked. Game 1, he opens the actual stones. He opened Drollmeister, Nadir, Tenki, Eldland, and his 6th card draw was another Droll. Game 2, I ended up winning in a pretty grindy back and forth game state after dustering him, and I also opened Bell Ash, so that was nice. And then game 3, I ended up losing in a really unfortunate way. He gets to Dogmatica Maximus, and he actually resolves the Maximus 3 times. So I've been forced to burn 6 cards from my extra deck. And we're going back and forth. I'm low on life, and I top deck Lulu after my 2 cards in hand are Lulu, and I'm like, and I have 2 King Longs banished. I'm like, okay, I've got this. I dump trap, add King Long, summon the other Lulu, King Long, negate his window, make Fortune Tune, make Zeus. Clear his board, and his 1 draw for turn, his top deck for turn is Nadir, and I end up losing.
Yeah, that was like, I think that was the most unlucky thing that happened all weekend. Honestly, we probably could have made top 8, and the people in the finals right now, no offense to them at all. It's just like, we got really unlucky that he top decked Nadir's open. But it happens. It's,
yeah, definitely. But yeah, so overall, it was a really solid tournament. Really happy I've been able to participate. Had a ton of fun with Ryan and Jacob. So overall, this weekend was an awesome experience.
That's awesome.
Any questions, Andrew?
No, that pretty much wraps it up. The Mischief for the Gnome, I think, was a pretty good tech choice. I do like the Crescendo for Cycle Reader, and I do agree that Ghost Bell is a little lackluster. I think Meister, or things that banish for cost, and able to Meister those, is a bit better than Ghost Bell. Except that hit's not here and other things, but I still like Meister better. But anyways...
What are your personal thoughts on the take of actually running impermanence because on paper it doesn't sound great, but against the 75 Cloud Castle boards for VW, you can just imperm the Cloud Castle and they can't respond because obviously 75 only responds to monster effects.
Yeah, I mean it's a good tech choice. We'll see where it goes. I know it's definitely been in this tournament and been utilized. I don't know how crazy it is, but kind of the same instance as like droplets, where like virtual worlds still activate in hand, Drytron still activate in hand. So like some of those interactions, kind of like your opponent basically has to watch you play Yu-Gi-Oh, and by the time he's using it, you're targeting it with Coral or other effects to like remove it before you perform your combo. So it's very good if your opponent's going second, but I don't know how it is if you're setting it going first. But yeah, thank you guys so much. Is there anything else you guys would like to say, or are you guys all set?
Anything from you, Jacob?
No, I think that's about it. Subscribe to BladeYGO. Let's go.
All right, thanks.
Subscribe to Grim.
Yeah. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity on the channel, and I appreciate what you do and provide for the community, Andrew, and hope you have a great day.
Yeah,
Thank you. And I want to say one last thing. Giorda to Chiuso. Thank you, Giorda.
All right.
Thank you, Giorda.
Thanks, guys. And yeah, don't forget to check out BladeYGO as well. And guys, don't forget to like and subscribe to the Luxury channel for more content and more events. And I hope you guys have a great day. And bye-bye.